So now we're going to look at the local adjustments options in the develop module over here. Now it's really important to understand that local adjustments means what you are doing is you are having an effect on a certain part of the image, but not all of the image. I say certain part because it's extremely flexible as to what part you affect, depending on which tool you use. But if we just start over here, so if we look over here in this area here, we've already used the crop tool, so we know how to use the crop tool. Next to the crop tool is the spot removal tool. Now, the spot removal tool it's not brilliant, but what I tend to use it for is if there happens to be little bits of dust on my sensor, you can generally see them more in a blue sky. So quite often I will be removing spots from a blue sky. So I've just quickly found an image that has got a blue sky, and sometimes it's really hard to see. Sometimes I think, is that a bit of dirt on my actual computer, or is that a spot on the actual image? Only one way to find out. If you do the spot removal tool with it and you go over it, and if it disappears, then you know that it's from the image. Okay, I very quickly went over that. Let's go back over that tool. So basically what you can do is you can change the size of the tool. Now you can change the size over here, so it's smaller or larger. I actually prefer, on my mouse there's a little wheel, and if I move that up and down, it's just so much easier. And then I'll just go over, and what it will do, it will select a part of the image that it thinks is similar to what you want to remove, and then it will take the information from that part of the image and then put it over where you have selected. The thing is, it doesn't always get it spot on. Sometimes you can tell. I think it's done a pretty good job in this instance, but sometimes it doesn't do such a good job. I've known people try and clone out leads with this tool. It's really not the tool for that. Definitely not. But anyway, just to say, underneath this size you've got a feather, so all that does is soften the edges. So as I increase the feathering, it just increases the feathering edge, and also you can increase or decrease the opacity. Again, this just really depends on what you're doing at the time. You may or may not want to do that. Let me see if I can find another image where I might want to get rid of something. Let's see, in this image, let's see if I can get rid of Boo in this image. Not going to work. This will show you really how it's only really useful for certain things. Let's go and try and get rid of Boo. Yeah. See what I mean? So it's not for everything, but I found it. Oh look, there's a spot I missed over here, just there. But I found it really helpful for just subtle little things. Any wholesale changes like removing dogs, leads, people, that's what I do in Photoshop. You see, yeah, that's done an okay job. So that's the spot removal tool. Over to the right of that, you've got the red eye reduction tool. You know what? I've never used this. I've never needed to. I've never had any red eye. So yeah, can't really show you this. Sorry. Now, over to the right of that is a great tool. It's called the graduated filter tool. Right. This is where things start getting really fun. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a virtual copy of this particular image, because I like to keep that edit because I like that edit, but I'm going to get this original picture and I'm going to reset it. Okay, the light actually was quite nice as it was, but what I'm going to do is I quite like all this as it is, but I really want to make a graduated gradient of darker blues and more saturated blues coming down here. I'm going to do that with the graduated filter. So check this out. So click on the graduated filter. Now look, underneath here you have got so many different options. And the reason why there's some numbers in there already is because what it will do, it will take the settings that you used previously and bring them in. But nothing's happened because I haven't actually used the tool yet. A great way of, let's say you had these all over the place, but you don't want to sort of have to set them all to 0. That'll be quite a lot of faff. You can just double click on effect and then they all go back to 0. That's a fantastic tool. So what I want to do is I want to, let's say I want to reduce the exposure slightly, bring the highlights down, bring the saturation up. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click, hold, and then let go. So what will happen is 100% of the settings that I set here will be up here and 0% will be here, and it will be a graduated filter from there to there. I can turn this around if I want to. I can move it, or I can do another one. Now I don't want that other one, so what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to press backspace to delete it, and then it just gets rid of it. But I'm going to go back over to this one and I'm going to take it back, and if I hold my mouse just off the center point, it will turn into this little double-ended arrow thing, and then I can bring it back round. But do you know what? Sometimes just easier, get rid of it and do it again. There we go. Okay, so that's not how I want it. It's not blue enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to the temperature and I'm going to bring that down a bit. Oh yeah, that's better. Maybe up the saturation a little bit. Okay, so that's looking a lot better. So the great thing about the graduated filter is it's graduated. You're not sort of, you can use a brush over here, which we'll talk about in a minute, but it's a lot more subtle. And skies, especially like this, can be very subtle, and you don't want things to be too obvious. Now, of course, Lightroom is non-destructive. If I'm happy with that, I can just click done. Okay, that's fine. But if I wanted to change my mind about how that looks, I can go back up to the graduated filter, and any graduated filters that I have applied to this image so far, they will be represented by this grey dot. So I want to click that, and let's say I want to make it more pink and maybe a bit warmer. It's not really sort of doing what I want it to do, but you know, it all depends on your taste. Okay, yeah, well that's not right, is it? That's not looking good now. Oh wow, okay, I've gone all over the shop. But it just goes to show how creative you can be with this tool. Oh no, I liked it the way it was. Well, if I like it the way it was, I can press done and then I can go to edit, and then I can just kind of keep going back. Or actually, no, I could go into the history and go back to the state of, that it was when I liked it. But you know what? I can't be bothered doing that right now. I'm not going to bother. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete it. Okay, so that's the graduated filter. Let's see another picture. Let's see, how about this one? So this one, I may or may not want to highlight the dog, have an area that is highlighted and all the rest isn't quite so highlighted. Now I could do that with a brush, but another really great way of doing it is with this tool. It's called the radial filter. This is brilliant. So again, you click on the radial filter and you get all these options. Again, I'm just going to press double click on effect so they all go back to 0 so I can start all over again. Now what I'm going to do is, let's say I want the area around this dog to be more highlighted than the rest of the picture, so I'm probably going to up the exposure a bit, maybe the shadows, see what that's like. Then I'm just going to draw a circle and put it over the dog. Okay. A really good thing to know about this is if you go down underneath all these settings where it says invert, if you click invert, it will do what you say up here, but on the other side of the circle. We're finding it's not so easy to tell what I've done here. Okay, obviously that looks dreadful, but this is just to show you. Click invert again, and then the effect will be inside the circle. Clicking it again, it'll be on the outside of the circle. And of course, it is, again, a filter, a radial filter. So 100% of the settings will be here, and 0% of the settings will be on the edge here. And then it will be a gradual effect from the center to here, or from here to the edge of the image, depending on how you've set it, if that makes sense. I hope it does. I think actually this isn't the greatest example. I'm going to go to this picture and do it again. Okay, in fact, look, you can tell I've already done some on this picture previously, because you've got some little grey circles. That red thing that keeps coming up, that's basically the mask overlay. That's basically showing you the area in which you've changed things using this tool. Now I can show that, and then if I click on here, that shows me where I did an effect before. So clearly I did a radial filter on this picture before, and the effect was inside. And if I click on another one, sorry, on the other one the effect was on the outside. Then if I click on the other one, oh, right, they're too small, can't get to them. The effect was, oh, what I don't know what I'm doing one over there for. Oh yeah, I was doing a little bit of a lighting effect over there. But basically the red represents where you're actually affecting it. So it's actually quite handy to show you where it is you did something, because in some pictures I will have quite a lot of these little grey dots around, and you can get a bit confused as to what you've done. Let's try on this one. Okay, so let's say I want to highlight this dog's face. So I'll get the radial filter, do the little circle again. And you can adjust this circle, by the way, once you've done it. It doesn't have to be, you know, this is the great thing about Lightroom. You can always adjust things after you've done them and in between. So I'm just going to untick that. I don't want to actually see this red thing because I can't actually see the effect of what I'm doing. So I'm just going to uncheck that. Okay. Now I'm going to up the exposure a little bit more, just so I can actually get a much better idea of what I'm doing. Now notice over here in the navigator, I'm beginning to see that I'm overdoing it a little bit. See that kind of white halo around his face? Yeah, it's not so good. But in the main picture, you can't tell so much. And this is another reason, like I said, why I like the navigator, because you can see these things a little bit better than in the bigger picture. So I love the radial filter. I think it's fantastic. I use it quite a lot, along with the, what's this one called again? The graduated filter. Radial filter, graduated filter. Let's put a radial filter on this dog here. It just sort of brings the eye, I think, to a certain area if you can do this. But you can do all sorts. You can make it darker, you can just make it more saturated, you can make it less sharp, more sharp, bring up the shadows, take the shadows down. You can do so many different things depending on what you're actually wanting to do. Most of the time I just use this to perhaps bring up the exposure on a certain area, make it a little bit sharper, maybe put a bit of texture just in that one place, just to draw your eye into his face. Actually, I think that makes things look a bit better in that picture. Okay, so the last tool that I'm going to show you, and this is probably the tool that I use mostly, and again, if you hover your mouse over it, it's called the adjustment brush. The adjustment brush is a fantastic tool. I use it all the time. Now you've noticed as I've selected the adjustment brush, 3 little grey dots have come into this picture. This is because I have used the adjustment brush in this picture 3 times. Now again, if I click on one, it will tell me what I did. I upped the saturation a bit, reduced the temperature a little bit. Now if I show the selected mask overlay, this is the area in which I did those things. This is just such a really handy thing, because if you're anything like me, you forget what you've done, and then if you go back and you think, okay, I'll put a bit more saturation in the sky. What did I do to his face? I probably put some sharpening on. That's what I tend to do. Oh yeah, look, I put a bit of exposure, a bit of shadows, and a bit of sharpening. Let's have a look at the original picture for this one. Okay, so yeah, I mean, you know what, this is a typical raw picture. You can see that there's colours there, but really all I've done in the edit is really bring them out, and I've put the emphasis on his face. Not too much, but I've brought sharpness to his face, because this is where you want your eye drawn, is to him, not really to this grass. The grass is really just there to frame him. Okay, let's have a look at that. So let's see. I'm going to make another virtual copy of this one because I like this one, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the original picture and I'm going to reset it, just because I want to show you how I do use the adjustment brush. But before I do that, I'm just going to quickly copy and paste the settings from this picture, because I don't want to start all over again with all the colours. And I'm going to show you this copy and pasting separately because it's amazing. Oh, how good was that? Okay, so the colours and everything from that picture are now back in this picture, but I'm not quite happy with it still. I'm still not happy with my eyes not being drawn enough to his face, and his face is a little bit in shadow. So I'm going to get the adjustment brush. So underneath the adjustment brush, you've got absolutely tons of settings. Again, you can increase or reduce the size of the brush. I prefer, like I said before, to use the little wheelie thing on the mouse to go up and down. It's just so much easier. And I always have a bit of feathering on the brush too, because I like to soften the edges. I generally tend to use flow of 100, because if I'm going to do it, I may as well do it right. But sometimes I might not want to have 100% of this effect going on. It really depends on what I'm doing. So let me just double click that to go back to 0. So now I'm starting from scratch. Okay, so I'm going to up the exposure a little bit and the shadows, maybe a bit of sharpening and a bit of texture around his face. Okay, there we go. Okay, let's get rid of show selected mask overlay. Okay, so I've done one, but I'm not quite happy with this area here. I'm happy with what I've done here, but not here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press done, then I'm going to select the brush again, and I'm going to do it again, but only over his eyes. And then I'm going to press done. And if I select it again, then you can see, look, here are the two little grey dots. And if you click on one, if you hold your mouse over it, there it will show you where you've applied the effect. And that's where I did that one. But if you wanted to see the effect the whole time, you just click on one, click on the other. Sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it gets in the way, and I'll just uncheck that. With this sky, I think I'd probably make it a little bit more saturated, so I'll get the brush again, just double click that. If I reduce the temperature, it's naturally going to make it more blue. I don't think I need to do too much to it though. Let's see. Reduce the temperature, put a bit of saturation in. Let's have a look. See, it doesn't take too much to make it look pretty nice, I think. And if we go back to the before and after, yeah, I think I'm happy with that. So I can tell you these tools are absolutely fantastic, and I think that you're going to really enjoy using them if you haven't already started using them. I'm going to show you much more of these. I'm going to do 3 freestyle edits to show you, and I'm going to really be using these quite a lot in those edits. Okay, that'll do for now.